Now, joining us on the Young Turks, former presidential candidate on the Democratic side, but not anymore, and former mayoral candidate in 2021 in New York, and the author of the new book, Forward, Notes on the Future of Our Democracy, Andrew Yang. Andrew, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you, Cenk. You too, Michael. News Nation, I got to get there.
All right, we'll have you on.
All right, so Andrew, you're starting a third party. That's super fun. But of course we've got questions about it. So there's a couple of significant hurdles to clear in starting a third party. So you're leaving the Democratic Party. I know Michael might have questions about that. I partly get it. You point out massive problems with our institutions. I totally get it. But I'm wondering if third party is the right answer. And so one of the hurdles is, generally speaking, experts believe you need about $10 million to even get on the ballot nationwide with a third party. So how do you overcome such a giant hurdle to begin with?
Thanks, Cenk. My campaign did raise $40 million last time running as a Democrat. So I'm feeling pretty enthusiastic about our ability to make the case. But the misconception is that somehow we're projecting forward to 24. We have this election coming up in 2022, and we need to be laser focused on trying to preserve our democracy in the face of really, really dire threats. And so that's where my attention is. That's where I think your attention is. We have to get ballot initiatives across the finish line in states around the country that will actually unlock our legislators from the extreme incentives that are contributing to the polarization that we can see is tearing our country apart. So my goal is ballot initiatives in 2022 and elevating candidates that are for open primaries and ranked choice voting to help improve the alignment between our representatives and the people they're supposed to represent, because right now they're representing the 20% of the most extreme people on either side or special interests.
As Andrew, as much as starting a third party is a noble thing to do, because I think a lot of Americans, at least when polled, say that that's something they want. It's also proven very difficult for people, and the reason is, it's obvious, right? It's obvious whether it's John Anderson running against Ford and Carter, whether it's Ross Perot running against Bush and Clinton.
Just to interject again, that's always presidential. But continue, Michael.
It is presidential, but I'm talking about the challenges. The challenges are not just presidential, Andrew. The challenge of, if I'm voting for alderman, if I'm voting for mayor, if I'm voting for member of Congress, I feel like even though I want to vote for that third party candidate, there's somebody who isn't getting my vote who otherwise would have, and that may facilitate a victory for the other person. How do you break that cycle? Is it possible to do something that no one, Teddy Roosevelt couldn't do it?
Well, you're describing the spoiler effect, Michael. We all know it well, that if you vote for the third party candidate, you're going to help the bad guys win. And that is purely a function of our plurality voting process. If you swap it out for ranked choice voting, which is a much more modern process that will enable people that actually vote their preferences, it helps women, it helps minority candidates, then the spoiler effect goes away. So that would be my big argument, is that we need ranked choice voting in the worst way. And if the Republican Party had used ranked choice voting in 2016, Trump probably does not win, because he's getting, let's call it 35-40% of the vote, but he's not getting 51% of the vote. And it's unlikely that someone would have had Jeb Bush 1, Trump 2, if you know what I mean. So this is the process which we need to make that's going to improve our legislators' incentives. It's going to get rid of the spoiler effect. It's going to discourage negative campaigning. Why are we stuck with this archaic plurality voting system, particularly when we can see that it's driving this race to the extremes that's going to unfortunately hurt everyone?
Yeah, so, well, let's talk about that. Look, I love ranked choice voting, and I appreciate that you went through a contest where they had that. You didn't win, and you still love the system. So that's actually very principled and great. Of course, you have the challenge that it doesn't exist in most places, but I want to go to a bigger challenge, which is the extremes that you talked about. Andrew, I don't think there are extremes anymore. First of all, I don't think there is a very small sliver of extreme on the left, but it's not. I just don't think it's certainly not anything that people talk about in the mainstream press. None of what they talk about on the left is extreme. That's my opinion. I don't know if you disagree. I'm curious to hear what you think. In fact, let's start there. What do you think is extreme on the left?
Sure. Oh, so what's going on the left is a different type of distortion, which is that you have certain special interests that know that all of the Democratic legislators have to go through a Democratic primary. So it's not the general public, it's this 10 to 20% who are the most engaged, yes, but also the people have the highest at stake. So this could include big pharma, which we're seeing. This could include teachers unions. So there are different interest groups that take advantage of the fact that you have a relatively narrow slice of the public that's actually going to control who gets reelected. On the right, you can definitely see the extremity loud and clear, where it's making it so everyone has to be in lockstep with Donald Trump. But I want to point out the biggest counterexample to this lockstep, which we should be celebrating and then rolling out around the country. And that is what happens right now with Senator Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, the only Republican senator to vote to impeach Trump, who is also up for re-election next year. Why did she do it? Her approval rating right now is at 6% among Alaskan Republicans. It's political suicide. So why did she do it? She did it because last year Alaska got rid of the closed party primary. So she too can take her case to 51% of Alaskans and say, look, I'm my own person, I have my own judgment, and now she has a fighting chance. If we change the incentives, then we can actually make it so that legislators will become more reasonable and less extreme overnight.
Yeah, so
the Murkowski arguments. The Murkowski argument's great. She also won as a write-in candidate, so she's an unusual senator to begin with. So I guess I want to ask, I want to follow what Cenk asked there with the extremes, right? Because you're still, do you think that, and I'm asking this, do you think that by doing this, by creating a landscape like Lisa Murkowski's looking at in Alaska, that you are going to then marginalize the extremes? And then where do they fit in? Where do the people that, the Democrats who are at the extreme end of the Democratic Party, where does their voice get heard at that point?
Well, one of the fascinating things that I explore in my book that Ezra Klein talked about in his book about why we're polarized is that the linkage between your political alignment and your policy stance is actually pretty low. And I learned this when I was running for president and talking to people in Iowa, where if you say to someone, hey, do you think drug prices are too high? They'll be like, yes. Do you want to get those drug prices down? Yes. Like, you want the government to be able to do it? Yes. Do you like socialized medicine? No. Like all of a sudden, it's just like if you bust out what seems like partisan or coded language, then everyone will be like, ah. So if you have a system where you're decreasing the extremity, then you're gonna arrive at things that most Americans agree with, like the government negotiating lower drug prices on behalf of all of us. We all know that I champion universal basic income. I believe this is the path to universal basic income. 55% approval right now. You go to anyone and be like, hey, what do you think? Cash for people? And be like, yes. So to me, the problem right now is that if you have 10 to 20% of Americans really excited about something, that's not enough. Like, we have to face it. So what we need to do is create a system where you have much more generalized alignment between legislators and the people, and not have 83% of districts where it's just this side or the other side. And then you know what happens? Next to nothing.
Yeah, so Andrew, first let me just say about your comment about the extreme on the left. Let's just be clear, the examples you gave of the unions giving money to Democratic politicians and big drug companies giving money to Democratic politicians is not an extreme on the left, it's an extreme in the Democratic Party. That's the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. Even if they're taking money from unions, it's still money in politics and it's still corruption.
Oh, no. I agree with you, Cenk. What I'm describing though is that if you have a relatively narrow corridor of the electorate that you're going through, then it's easier for a special interest to go in and be like, hey, like let's get these people locked up than if you had to deal with the majority. Then it's harder.
Yeah, I understand. I didn't want the audience to get confused about that because the left hates money in politics, the actual left. So now, but let's stay on that point of the cultural divide and the extremes, because there is a massive cultural divide in this country, Andrew. So when you talk about economic issues, it's easy to get massive agreement without the talking points. Once you put in the talking points of the Tucker Carlsons, et cetera, then you're gonna get disagreement. And it's based on just honestly propaganda, et cetera. Okay, but that's the easier part. The harder part is the social issues. So how in the world are you gonna get people to vote for a party when the two sides of America, it's real. We don't agree with each other. One side says, hey, we don't want gay people to have the same rights as straight people. We don't mind cops beating up black people, and we think Black Lives Matter is offensive, right? And the other side says, I don't want to work with these monsters. I'm never going to vote for someone who can't make up their mind about those issues and 1,000 other things, and the nonsense talk of critical race theory, et cetera. So how in the world do you bring us together on social issues, which I view to be a much larger challenge?
Well, to take gay rights, which I think was your first example, I mean, that there's actually relatively high consensus among Americans that gays should have equal rights, and that there's a relatively marginal group that right now is being elevated because of the fact that we have this duopoly that leads to the most extreme voices getting, frankly, like disproportionate attention. I mean, right now you have political incentives that reward the extremes, then media incentives, to your point, reward the extremes, and then social media pours gasoline on the whole thing. So if you have that as a dynamic, then it seems completely intractable. But if you sit someone down and say, look, like what can we agree on? It's much more likely that we're going to be able to arrive at consensus around even some very, very divisive social issues. And I'll use firearms as an example. You have like very extreme points of view. Obviously, I've talked to Americans of every background on this. And what I try and focus on is like, look, the #1 victims of gun violence are gun owners by suicide. Like that's #1. So can we agree on that is a problem, and then try and focus on that? Like that, there are elements that will enable us at least to make some degree of progress. But you know what's never going to result in progress is imagining that if we stay in our silos, that we're somehow going to overpower the other side. That, by the way, is just getting more strident.
Let's talk about that gun example a little bit, because if you speak to whether it be someone from the Brady Center, whether it be Fred Guttenberg, whether it be Senator Chris Murphy, and you talk to them, we just want we want to find some common ground on one gun issue, because that will be reasonable progress, incremental. It's not everything we want. And of course, they haven't been able to do it. They had a massacre in a preschool, and they weren't able to do it. Every day we wake up to it. I think it's noble. I think it's a great idea. I think hearing you talk about that and highlighting the suicides by gun owners being the #1 cause of death among of gun deaths is great. But there's also a challenge, and that's reality. And whether or not and I'm not a naysayer on this. I applaud what you're doing, but I do think that the fact that they're polarized, and I wouldn't even say polarized, the fact that the duopoly is the only way that power is able to be wielded these days, and it creates a stalemate, doesn't that make that a little more difficult than it ought to be for what you're doing?
And that is exactly what we need to change, Michael. So for those of you who are watching and are concerned about our democracy, you should be concerned. I'm deeply concerned. And if you look around the world, UK, how many parties does it have? 5. Sweden, 8. Germany, 10. Netherlands, 18. If you have a system like that, do you really think that 9 parties would be against common sense gun legislation? No, you'd have much more variety of point of view, and you'd be able to get more done. It would also make the system much more resilient to authoritarianism. Because right now, the founding fathers never could have imagined national parties at the scale we have them. And then if you get a corrupt leader, guess what? Everyone's incentive is to fall in line, or they lose their job. Does that seem like an intelligent, robust, resilient system to anybody? If you had even 5 parties and then one of them succumbs to terrible leadership, that's not an existential threat. No, like that's where we should be racing as quickly as possible to make our system actually stand the test of time.
Yeah, so look, when you talk about the problems in your book Forward, it's hard not to agree. I mean, we might disagree a tiny bit on some of the details, right? But overall, we have massive structural problems. The duopoly, in my opinion, sucks, and it sucks in the opinion of a lot of people. So there's a lot of folks rooting for you to be able to tackle this. But when you get into the specifics of being able to win with a third party, Andrew, it just seems that our divide is too intractable.
So one of the things that people should know is that this is an inclusive movement. You can join as a registered Democrat, keep your party registration, Republican, keep it independent, sure. And a lot of the races that we're going to be helping with, it's going to be in a Democratic primary, Republican primary. And is someone going to run under the Forward Party? Probably not, because it's not going to be like super helpful to them from day one. Like that's one reason why task number one is to get to open primaries and ranked choice voting, so you can actually get different points of view, not just forward party, but again, movement towards this robust system that we all can see is what we've been missing. So, when you talk about like third party win, I mean, like there are obviously massive structural impediments, but there's nothing stopping an independent popular movement from supporting a Democratic primary candidate who's for open primaries and ranked choice voting, a Republican primary candidate who's for open primaries and ranked choice voting, ballot initiatives that can unlock our legislators from these extreme motivations, the way that Senator Murkowski's been unlocked. Let's unlock legislators. I mean, like that there are all sorts of, and we can do that in 24 states via ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound like a much intelligent, productive approach than banging our heads against the wall against this dysfunctional duopoly that is clearly broken?
No, but Andrew, look, there's two different issues, social and economic. Now I'm going to jump back to economic for a second, because when you say, hey, there's 18 parties in the Netherlands and there's no way that 9 of them would believe X, Y, Z. No, I don't think that's the issue. So I actually disagree with parts of the solution. I think what you're saying about ballot measures, third ranked choice voting, et cetera, I think that's smart. I think working within Republican and Democratic parties within primaries is smart, so I appreciate you saying that. But no, if Netherlands allowed legalized bribery like we do, 16 out of 18 of those parties would be for high drug prices, low taxes on the rich, endless wars, you name it, they would all get corrupted. We have the real problem in this country isn't that, oh, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have gone awry. The real problem is that they've both gone awry because they both get bribed. So if you form a third party, by the way, as you're doing here with Forward Party, and I'm curious to ask you, and so I'll do it right here, are you gonna allow corporate PAC donations? Because if you do, your party will instantly get taken over by bribery as well.
You're pointing out the core problem, which is right now our government is overrun by moneyed interests. The Forward Party right now, we're just passing the hat to grassroots donors and individuals. We don't have any design on taking corporate PAC money. If we ever did, we would be totally transparent about it. But I'm going to suggest that people who are going to give to the Forward Party just want things to get better and change. Like what the heck do we control? Nothing. Like what kind of corporate PAC would be like, you know what we're going to do? Like, the Forward Party is going to, like we're the pro lowercase d democracy popular movement. Certainly, again, I'm practical. We're going to need resources to get our work done, and hopefully we can get it done. Get those resources from human beings.
But I think what Cenk's also asking though is like going forward, if I may, is that when you do get to the point, obviously you're starting out now. When you do get to the point that there are candidates who are running under the emblem of the Forward Party, are you going to make that a tenet of the party to not take corporate PAC money during an election? Has that been talked about?
One thing we will have as a tenet is total transparency around who's backing a campaign. And I think that's what people should expect.
Okay, Andrew,
I want to ask you a little bit about, let me just, one thing, going forward again, like starting it up, fantastic, exciting. I was talking to a Yang supporter in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who after hearing you speak, and I asked, I was doing a story on it, and I asked that supporter, I said, what excites you about it? And he said, this person said to me, the newness. He said, though, he feels like it's a great first date and he loves being on the first date, but he doesn't think it's going to go anywhere. What would you tell that Yang supporter about the Forward Party? That this is the first date of the Forward Party. You have the book out. You've got this momentum now, but where does it go? Where is it? If it's not going to make a huge splash next year, probably, but it may make a little one. How does it endure?
If we get some ballot initiatives across the finish line next year, I am going to be
great. No, absolutely, I understand that. But what about? I want to know about 5, 6,
I would say to that person is that Andrew Yang is a happily married man, which is that I go on the first date, and then you know what I do? I call you. And then we go on a second date, and then a third date, and then eventually, I meet your family, and then I get down on one knee and put a ring on it. I'm a high commitment fellow. That's what
I wasn't talking about Evelyn. I was really talking about.
Well, no, it's the same thing, which is like, look, if you look up, like, do I think that the Forward Party is going to be everything that I want it to be? in 12 months? Like, of course not. 24 months? Probably not. Like, we're going to grind. Like, I'm a builder, I'm a grinder. Like, I've run organizations for years and years. This could be the greatest, most important thing I ever do. And if it's what I spend decades on, then great. Like, so that's what the happily married thing is about. Is like, I've been with my wife now for 15 years. I think I'll be with the Forward Party for an extended period of time to help it reach its potential, because we all know the country needs something just like this. And then I'm gonna take it the next level. We all know that if someone was gonna do it, like it would probably be someone like Andrew. I'd say, like, if you lined up people who might do it, it'd be like, new political upstart party. Like, I'd be a logical candidate.
There are a lot of great ways to watch the Young Turks, but is there a best way? Of course, the best way is to watch live. Tune in weekdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You get our uncensored, unapologetic version of the news that you won't get anywhere else. Watch us live.